Hi everybody, this is Rhys Barber from Audiology Associates. Thanks very much for watching that earwax removal video today. You can see from this patient's video here, they've got one very narrow slanted ear canal, which has got a very thick piece of hard wax in here. And the patient's been really struggling with this particular side for a little while. Hasn't had their ears cleaned out for a couple of years, but you can see the narrow nature of the canal makes this a little bit more of an awkward suction to do. Now, I know you've seen a lot of this kind of thicker, stickier wax removals recently, because that's basically what we're getting a lot of coming through at the moment. But this one's a little bit more unusual because it's much more difficult to get out. The narrow nature to the canal and the fact it's got this ever so slight slant here as well means that we can only just accommodate the standard size ulnar tube in here. And you can see at the moment I'm gently probing the bottom end of this wax here to try and lift it. I'm hoping that it's going to stay in one piece, to be able to lift it from the base of the canal and draw the whole thing out. But as you can see, it's just so sticky that it's just not budging. It's this very clay type consistency that we've talked about in videos before. I'm just aiming for the top section of the wax here. Now I've tried lifting from the bottom and that's not really moving this at all. So let's try rolling from the top and see how that works. But what you can see here is as I'm moving the suction tube over the top of this wax, it's just pulling and almost molding the wax further into the canal. So we're going to switch up tools here. We're going to use the Jobson horn. Now this is a great little tool for this particular type of wax. There's just a teeny tiny gap at the top there allowing us to get through with the Jobson horn. But as you can see, as we fold this forwards, the wax has a little bit more of a harder consistency the deeper in you go, and you can see that thick clay type material of wax there coming away. But the difficulty here, we're kind of really getting everything crossed that this is going to come out in one big chunk, because if it doesn't, it's going to make this so much more difficult to remove. And there we are. You can see we've got a nice big chunky bit behind, so we're hoping that when we look back in, it's going to have taken a good chunk of that away. Unfortunately, what you can see is the kind of worst case scenario really here. You can see the groove that's down the center of that wax. Now, the canal walls, obviously we know, are very sensitive, and the wax is now being pushed against the canal walls, and we've got this deep groove through the center, which means it's just going to be stuck everywhere and an absolute nightmare to get out. But what you can see, we've got the standard side, the fine end in here now, just to give us a little bit more maneuverability. We've also introduced a little bit of olive oil, which is why you can see that little bit of sort of blurring to the camera there. So we just cleared that off with a little Q-tip right at the entrance to the canal. So what I'm doing here is trying to probe the remaining wax for any weak spots. Now we've taken this front section away, so we've got a much better chance of being able to roll this and fold it in. Now normally you would see me collapse the sides in here, but it is so firmly stuck that it just won't collapse in from the sides. So we are really restricted in our options here as to how we're going to get this out. Now this is, I really did think that we may not get this wax out for this particular patient. Now, what we did start to see, which you will see in a second, I'm just trying to pull away from the sides now. I'm really desperately trying to unstick this. If I can get this wax mobile, I've got a much better chance of getting this out. But while it is stuck firmly against the canal wall, it's just not going anywhere. So you can see I'm just gently probing around the outside edge, hoping that we're going to get a little bit of movement here. Now what you can see when we probe the top here is I'm just getting a little bit of movement to the top of this wax. It's flexing, but it's also just rocking a little bit. So I'm going back in now. Let's probe this this left-hand side here. There we are. We're just holding the suction tube on. I'm looking to see if we can get a good grip, or the suction will actually peel it away from the canal walls and detach it there. Back to the top again now. Sometimes with this you can drop the suction tube on the top and it'll actually pull down on the wax as you're drawing it down, almost like a cross between a Jobson horn and the suction. But you can just, can you see that little, there we are, you just saw a little bit of movement. Now, we know that this wax is now mobile, okay? Which is a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel for us, because when it's mobile, it means that we've got maneuverability to that wax. We can try and draw this down the canal. The hard thing about this particular ear canal is it goes slanted, narrow, wide, and kind of stands back. So what we've effectively got to do is get this wide piece of wax, turn it, pull it through that slant that's just not budging. Perfect for the Rosen inserter. Okay, now a lot of people say, oh, you don't use the St. Bart's hook and things like that very often. To be honest with you, I don't really find the St. Bart's hook particularly useful for the majority of ear canals, but the Rosen inserter for this particular type of ear canal is great, much better than St. Bart's hook, because it's got that very narrow end. You haven't got that severe 90-degree angle. You've got that slight bend, which means you can drop over the top of wax much more easily. And what you can see here is I'm using that more solid side of the wax there against itself. So I'm not able to pull it out with a Rosen inserter because it's such a narrow end, it'll just pull through the wax. But we can reposition the wax and try and spin it to get it around this bend to get it out the corner. And that's what you can see me doing here. Got to be ultra careful though, because it's very sharp, very pointed, and a very narrow ear canal. So it's not a good mix for the Rosen inserter ideally, but we can see we've just managed to pull this forwards. Let's hook behind this section here now, draw this down. Great, you see that sliding, that twisting motion we've got there. Now it's starting to move. We've got that front end. We can see the back end starting to roll forwards now. Let's drop behind that with the Rosen inserter, push it into this wax, and let's draw this out, and out that comes. I really, really didn't think we'd be able to get that out today. Eardrum looking nice and healthy there. A little bit of graying, I would say, actually, looking at that eardrum. So not quite sitting in its normal position. So this is what we removed. So we've got just under 2.5 centimeters, just a smidge over an inch. I've got the Rosen inserter there and the Jobson horn, so you can see the size of those tools as well. Yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. It was a bit of a tougher one. I know obviously you've been seeing a very similar kind of wax coming through at the moment, but I wanted to throw this one in just because it's good to see ones that we really struggle with as well, because obviously you get to know that we can get most stuff out, but it's always good when we get a challenge as well. It's always an interesting one to watch. Well, guys, I really hope you enjoyed that video. You'll have to bear with me next week because the two other audiologists that work here at Audiology Associates are both off at the moment, which means I'm trying to cover 3 different clinics. So you might have to bear with me just a little bit next week. I might not be able to put a video out until about Wednesday, I don't think, because things will settle down by then. But as always, guys, take care of yourselves, take care of your ears, and take care of one another, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye, everyone.